This is just a quick presentation of some of the notes, I guess you can say, on my experience of playtesting over the years. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so quick little introduction. So my name is Ron Jones. Ron Jones, the artist. For anyone who does not know of me, I am a independent game developer, as well as an artist and just an all-around kind of creative. So I've been in Atlanta just doing, all types of creative stuff like Andrew was talking about. I came here to go to the Art Institute of Atlanta to study game design and development. And that's kind of what put me on this path of game dev. And around 7 years ago, let's say around 3 years ago, I started working at Tripwire Interactive. So that's my day job, and I'm a QA tester there. Around 7 years ago, weird order, but that's where I started the IndieCluster. And the IndieCluster is a platform providing opportunities, resources, and services centered around supporting indie game developers. We focus on quality assurance testing, discoverability, community building, and curating a traveling booth for our games. As a digital future demands more interactive experiences, sustainability is crucial for these small businesses. And we've been able to create a modular studio for our members, allowing each developer to be able to focus on their game and stay connected at the same time. So that's basically what I've been able to create and help curate here in Atlanta to help the community grow. So I kind of have let's say a plethora of perspectives when it comes to playtesting. All right, so playtesting, or testing period. We can say that human nature is just the scientific method. Is as a child that you really don't have many goals in life. You don't really know what's going on. So your first thought, I guess, motive is to discover, try to figure out, and understand, right? So it's a combination of discover, experimentation, and testing. And in the scientific method, you form a hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, you gather data, do it all again until you form a conclusion. And essentially, us as humans, we do that every day, not just when we're young trying to understand the world, but when we're older, if there's a new product, or say you're learning to drive a car for the first time, or you're meeting someone new for the first time, there's a method that you use to gather that information, to try to understand, to look out for your survival, to test your assumptions about someone or something, and to just add that into the backlog of who you are as a person and how you can go about the world that much better. So the point is that testing is a huge part of that. So there's a number of I know there's a number of ways to kind of categorize or break up what testing is on the internet and even in certain studios. But I'm going to kind of chop it up into a couple different sections just to talk about those a little bit. So separating them into quality assurance, QA testing, user experience testing, which is basically, obviously whoever's the playing the game or whoever's actually going through. And a lot of this information isn't necessarily specific to the game industry, but user experience could also refer to listening experiences, or just even overall technology, whether it's websites, whether it's readers of your book and whatnot. It's a little weird thought, but I want everyone to kind of keep an open mind of what testing can actually mean, and how it can make a product or a person better. And the third category is community. Community isn't necessarily always a part of this a part of this testing category, but I wanted to kind of separate it off a little bit and mention some things that I think is important to keep in mind when thinking about testing. All right, so first, let's talk about a couple skills that would help any tester at any job. Communication is probably the most important. Communication and documentation. You ask it around, people are going to mention those two as probably the most important skills or most required skills to be able to get a job as a tester, to be able to do proficient work. You want to be able to speak the same language, if you will, literally and metaphorically, to those that are making the game, to those that are playing the game. You want to be able to understand like body language and cues, and be able to translate that to the developer or to whoever is actually making the game or in charge of making decisions to make the product that much better. And sometimes your skill set or communication skills are going to be like the most mature, if you will, or the best, because other people are like, they're kind of going to be dedicated, heads down and getting the work done. So you'll find yourself oftentimes being the one that has to go from department to department to communicate what might be wrong and how to fix it. And documentation is a part of that. Not everybody's always talking to everybody or all on a Zoom call. So oftentimes documenting what is wrong, who said it, where it might be fixed at, and how to get it to certain people. A lot of different studios or teams kind of use a system that can help ease that communication. So another good skill that I found out is knowledge of games and developer terms. Now, before I got into the game industry, I played a good number of games. I had a lot of memories, growing up and whatnot. But when it comes to developer terms and back then, and again, not to date myself, but even back then, like the internet wasn't even like a standard thing. You know what I'm saying? Like I knew emails. I knew how to send an email, how to read them, and that was basically kind of it. When I got to college, I jumped on Facebook, and then I obviously got involved in what goes into making computers and software and all that kind of stuff. So understanding what a game engine is, what collision boxes are, what hit registrations are like, and a lot of these things gamers like knew, and I was just a casual gamer, honestly. So there's even a lot of terms that I didn't really know back then, but definitely that, and the kind of the wealth of knowledge when it comes to games, game types, game modes, different story arcs, different ways that games implemented certain features. I think a lot of that, the more you have that in your library, the more that you can pull from when testing certain games, or even if you decide to make games. Patience is obviously a great skill in life, but in this job, it could be a lifesaver. Was patience to waiting for something to be resolved. When it comes to playing a game, when it comes to sending something or waiting for something to come back when you're trying to test something, or just sitting there actually repeating the same task over and over, waiting for something to either jump out at you or to actually, beat it to the ground, if you will, to make sure that it's actually fixed or it's actually not a problem. Speaking of problems, problem solving is something that I don't necessarily think, I don't know how required it is in a number of different studios, but I do know being able to problem solve and use critical thinking is a bonus. Is one of those skills that every developer loves their tester to be able to do, because that obviously makes it less work for them to do. But if the tester is aware of kind of what I mentioned before, as far as developer terms, where certain things can break, whether it's the AI, whether it's a certain collision box, whether it's a new feature, being able to kind of start that problem-solving process will help you in your testing career. And another great thing that I've learned, not necessarily just thinking out loud, but the ability to almost note your thoughts, to be able to say what it is you're thinking and doing, and almost list your experience. I've found it to be very helpful, not only when writing bugs, but this past year, the IndieCluster has been able to start a Twitch channel. And one of the things that we've noticed was missing during the pandemic was developers, or small indie developers, not really having that face-to-face interaction of people playing their game, and them being able to kind of watch and understand like how someone is going to get stuck in their game, and what certain features could be added or what things aren't clear, and being able to kind of not only visually express myself as I'm playtesting these games, these game jam games or whatever on Twitch, being able to express myself kind of fully, if you will, not necessarily exaggerating, but almost fully, whether I'm confused, whether I'm stuck, whether I'm enjoying myself, and at the same time thinking or saying out loud what my thought process is for doing something. I've found that to be incredibly helpful for the developer, because obviously we all can't read each other's minds, but knowing or trying to figure out someone's intent for the experience that you're going through, and then announcing what you think about that and why you went a different route, I think is incredibly helpful for those actually creating these experiences for us. All right, so let's get into it. So quality assurance testing. A number of things can and will fall into this category, but I just noted a couple here. Hopefully you guys can read this ticket I copied and pasted from my day job. But target testing is essentially your everyday testing, right? It's your basic, something's broken, hey, get in here and try to fix it. We have a new feature coming out. We got new weapons, load the game up, put XYZ into your loadout, this new machine gun or new shotgun, and we need you to test this and kind of beat into the ground. We need you to jump with this shotgun. We need you to try to throw it. We need you to pick it back up. We need you to reload while you're jumping and throwing. We need you to try to bite it. We need you to just do a bunch of stuff with it, right? So that's kind of the basics of whatever kind of feature is in the game, or what is needed to kind of pull everything together. And part of that, well, once you do a number of that over and over again, you can obviously form a spreadsheet of things that assets that are in the game and things that need to get tested. And most of the games that I worked at Tripwire have been ongoing games that basically we do live updates for, right? So oftentimes we're testing the same thing every build. So whether that's testing a new map or testing a certain loadout, we need to make sure that all these things work properly. So to help things out, help the system out, we can create a spreadsheet or documentation that has a list of everything on this loadout or a list of everything on this map, and everyone or someone needs to go through and test and check everything down the list until the list is done, or until the test cases are done. And that's one way to use a spreadsheet. And oftentimes they come in handy, but oftentimes they can it can seem to take up a lot of time. But until we can automate certain things, sometimes it's just our job to get in there and just do the things that not everybody want to do or have the time to do. And as you're creating bugs, as you're writing up tickets, if you see something broken, if you see something that needs to be looked at, you would write up a ticket, something similar to this. This is kind of the format that I've used, that I use at Tripwire, and this is the format that I've used to help navigate my team when creating tickets for the IndieCluster. It's basic information, a nice title, basically tells everybody what the topic is, builds affected, platforms tested, that's just standard. What version of the build that you're playing on, the description is basically what's going on, summary of the issue, and reproduction steps, probably one of the most important pieces of the ticket that anybody will tell you. It's essentially what I was talking about earlier as far as listing out your steps, listing out what could be wrong, might be wrong, and almost narrowing your steps down to a simple format. Start the game, open up the menu, click here, watch what happens, right? This one says start game on Dark Forest. Dark Forest is a map. Load in with the warbow. Warbow was a new weapon, and essentially you shoot the arrow. That way you can, you need to resupply, and you go to one of the ammo crates, and then you notice that the ammo crate wasn't restocking this new weapon, right? So it's obviously a simple mistake. When you're creating new features, oftentimes you have to go back to legacy features and assets and update that they respond to your new features, right? So this was just a simple case of that, and then you document the results and expect the results, and then the reproduction rate, right? So it happened 5 out of 5 times, so every time. Yeah, and just a quick note, one thing that I've noticed as far as something that we talked about in another presentation. Something that we talked about in another presentation about the importance of communication and understanding, like who it is that you're talking to and how you're talking to someone, especially when you're talking to an indie game developer who might not have anybody to look at their game, and whatever you say to them, they're going to really hold dear to. So understanding that just because something is broken or doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, it's almost like a not saying that this is wrong or this sucks, but saying, hey, this is faulty here, or I expected this result, but this is the result I got. So it's a matter of framing your verbiage, if you will, framing how you relay what might be wrong, and that doesn't necessarily apply blame to the creator. I know it might seem a little trivial, especially in a job or a larger studio when you're just there to work, but especially on the smaller scale, we're still creatives, we're still artists, if you will, and we kind of put our emotions into what we make. So just a quick little reminder to treat people with love, right? Okay, so I'm going to pause the presentation right quick, and I don't think I have enough time to play a game like I wanted to and kind of make a little mock bug, but I did. You said do it anyway. Well, I had mentioned, oops. Oh, I had mentioned later on that I wanted to play this game, Friday Night Funkin'. This was a indie game. I'm not exactly sure where it first was uploaded to, but it was a Ludum Dare game. And the developers uploaded the prototype. And then later on, I'm not sure how long it took them, but they uploaded a better version or a more refined version of the full game. This is the developer or the creator, and you guys can link to and play both versions. And when I'm kind of testing, not really testing, when I'm onboarding people to the cluster to do testing, I like to kind of throw them in this presentation or throw them this little test to see if they can almost play the original, the prototype, and find a couple bugs that they can write up themselves, and then see if the final version fixed, quote unquote, what they wrote up. So if we have time, I mean, it's just a little quick little thing. Awesome. Let me know if this is too loud. So I got too many audio devices coming, so I don't really know. But right. So yeah, this was when I first played this game. The volume was like all the way up here, right? So at first glance, the first time you jump into it, I'm the type of gamer where like I'm visual, right? And especially when there's so many different input devices, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, so I'm going to start clicking everything, right? And nothing is interacting with my mouse, with my cursor, right? You see things are moving, so it doesn't seem to be broken. But again, another thing I've learned on itch, that a lot of things are you press a key to start or press enter to start, right? So the next thing I do is press enter, and then it actually moves forward with the game. So I'm like, oh, okay, that would have helped if I was told that, but I got into the game, right? So this is a cute little simple rhythm game, right? And I'm really terrible at games, guys. So so don't judge me. This is all for your benefit, okay? So yeah, we got some cute graphics. Nice little rhythm game. So I lost, it looks like. And again, can't really use anything with the do anything with the cursor, but and even clicking restart, I'm used to like buttons kind of moving if I can click them, but still hit restart or hit enter, and then it actually restarts, right? So just a couple things. Make sure that stops. Just a couple things. So my first thoughts were something that I would write up would be to make it clear how to start the game. The audio, though it was awesome and the soundtrack is really great, there was no way to like stop it or mute or turn it down, at least from my perspective. And it kind of just jumped into the game, which obviously is still a game jam game, right? So that people have to cut corners, not necessarily cut corners, but have to worry about kind of story and fleshing things out a little bit later on. So these are just kind of ideas to help make the game feel a bit more full, right? So this was the second, or not the secondary, but I'm assuming the last final version of the game that was uploaded by the developer. And let's see if you guys could notice some of the differences. All right, so right off the bat, we went through some credits, right? So they're took their time a little bit more, gave credits to the developers and their partners. And here we go, press enter to begin. So now I'm not kind of clicking around. I'm not kind of misunderstanding what I need to do. I know that I need a keyboard to play this game. Then I hit enter. So let's do that. There we go. And then here we go. We have different modes, right? So it's not just jumping into the game. Actually, let me make sure you guys get here. So one thing I did notice Well, let's do that first. So it's telling me to go. It's telling me to press enter. It tells me that I need to navigate with the keyboard, right? So that's what I'm doing now. So here we go. We can navigate to the same game. And the art still looks similar, but it looks a bit more cleaner, looks a bit more refined. And yeah, I'm still terrible at it, but hopefully you guys get the understanding. So I did mention that it didn't mention anything about the volume and how to turn the volume down. I did learn that by reading the description, so that's why I was able to kind of use that. But that's another thing that needs to, oh, and you get a cute little dev screen, right? That's one thing that I would have noticed, or I would have marked down as a way to better relate to the player, how to turn the volume down or how to mute. So that is that. That's basically the benefits of, wait, let's do this. Basically the benefits of a QA tester and just people playtesting in general, right? That feedback loop of someone making something, someone playing something, and refining their perception of the game to make it better. Okay, so user experience. Now, user experience can be defined in a couple different ways. Here I have it. Here I have it as define, feel, and ad hocing. So design, I think, is probably one of the most categories of game development that kind of affects the user experience. And I think that that comes from the level designer, the game designer, and essentially, is that me or? Oh, okay. Wasn't sure if what is intended from the designer and the developers, and if that is actually getting to the player, if the player is actually traveling down these corridors, or are they lost in a forest of textures. That is kind of, it's a science behind it, honestly. So those that are in design and love design, keep at it, and this is their where they would get their feedback if they're actually having that fun, right? Which rolls into the feel of it. I think feel oftentimes is hard to define because, you know, each person is their own, but I think you can get a general sense if the person is having fun, if they feel the emotions that you want them to feel, whether it's happiness or if they're going through a story, or if they want them to be sad at a certain point or want them to feel guilt. Not just necessarily in the story, but the level or the game itself can actually invoke those feelings. Playing with certain lighting, playing with different sound effects. You know, we can play all types of horror games now just to dissect like how great those games are at invoking different emotions. And again, all of that is not necessarily, you can't write down in a game design doc, right, if it's actually working. So that is incredibly important for testers to be able to go through and convey. And ad hoc testing is essentially just kind of getting in there and not necessarily having a goal, but, you know, running into walls and breaking things or trying to break things, or not really following the path that the game is trying to let you follow. I do a lot of this just because I either space out, or I just get not necessarily bored, but I'm the type to kind of wander off the path. And this is the type of testing that where there's exploits, a lot of the community finds exploits or people like finding places or hopping up on walls, getting behind buildings that they shouldn't get behind, and just doing some ad hoc testing or following people in the community. You'll find a lot of these spaces, a lot of these spots that isn't meant to be seen, but might be able to be seen. So that's always some fun testing. And our last section is community. I put community in here essentially because I think it's important for developers and designers to kind of think about their communities, not just consumers, but also kind of a part of their QA team. Not just when it comes to like people playing their game, but brand awareness I think is really important to any business, any company, but especially making something that you want people to kind of have a certain experience with. Doing your kind of due diligence and understanding how people might receive a game, I think is important. We are, in a more PC culture these days. We're in a space where people still don't necessarily have the voice they should, but it's easier to access how people might feel about certain things. So I think it's always important to kind of be responsible and understand what your game, what your tool, your gun, your level, your lore, how that might not just really like look in the media, but like how it might affect somebody that thinks differently than you. So that's always important. Live ops is it's kind of like a on-demand patch or fix based on what's already out there, what's already live about your game. It's kind of thinking on your feet and figuring out kind of the best way to solve a problem. Oftentimes it obviously from the community who's playing the game, but I think there's a lot of tricks that sets that process apart from the original kind of QA development cycle. So it just requires a little bit of thinking, some creativity. Say whether the number of times we've kind of had issues with like localization or translating certain scripts and UI features to certain countries or parts of the world. So oftentimes we are able to kind of not necessarily have a whole patch, but switch out a couple files that have the right spelling or have a different way of fixing the problem that doesn't require creating a whole new build and then pushing that build and asking everybody to update. So community management, like I said, is a big part of that. Well, the community is a big part of that. Community management is where the internal team kind of helps navigate in a lot of those issues, spaces, hearing what your community might say or a community might complain about, or at the same time getting their involvement from certain aspects of your game that you couldn't do in-house. Like, say, if you have a MMO or a 64 online game and you only have a team of 10 people, you're not able to actually do that in-house, so your community becomes an incredible part of your development team, if you will. So just keeping all of that in mind, I think, is very important. And there's many different types of testers. Some people like being a tester. Some people actually want to stay in the career. Some people want to use it to transfer to other parts of the game development industry. So I think those that will be good at the job are those that enjoy everything about it and can kind of find their niche and find where they fit in, but also enjoy playing good games and giving that feedback to not just the developers, but to other friends, and to be able to kind of diagnose what they might be thinking. Yeah, that's our presentation. I appreciate everybody. Sorry for the rambling, but yeah, you can find me at _Ron Jones on Twitter, and check out the IndieCluster, our organization that we provide QA feedback for any developers.
Great presentation, Ron. Any one of those slides could have been its own presentation in of itself. So I appreciate you taking us through all of these. All right, we're going to move Ron into the general voice channel. If you got more questions, if you're a game dev, ask him how you can take this feedback without losing your mind. All right, Ron, thank you very much.
Thank you.